think trying to be reductive and treating all AI agents as quote unquote employees, I think is short-sighted and just leads us to the wrong position, which is why the you alluded to the other side of this, and that is that Cisco, um, and it's I'm not sure what this is, Outshift by Cisco. I think this is like a think tank of theirs or something. I'm not really sure,
Mhm.
but they've produced a paper something what they're calling the Internet of Agents. Now, I'm going to say on the record, I'm not sure that I agree with this as being the ultimate right approach, but I think it's at least much more in the right direction. And their
Mhm.
basic premise is that they, through their study, they estimate that the average enterprise is going to have 20,000 agents or more running within the walls of the enterprise. I think you and I both agree with that number, that
Mhm.
it's going to be this massive tech estate. And that therefore we need a way in a holistic, agnostic manner to manage them, which means we need standardization and we need, much like we did. So, this is obviously playing the Internet of Things, which it's not a great example because the Internet of Things never completely coalesced around these industry standards
Mhm.
either. So, it's been a marketing buzzword, but the concept of having this kind of common playing field for the agents to operate on, I think makes a lot more sense and certainly aligns more with the sort of the technical orientation that I have of how this all fits. So, I mean, what was your take on their strategy, I guess, that they're putting out here?
Yeah, I think that Cisco has a decent idea here, but I do think that there's going to be some trickiness in getting these agents to talk to each other because we are traditionally used to having applications and services talk to each other basically through APIs. We've been in an API world for a past decade, and that's important because everything is programmatic and software based. But I do think that agents, just due to their nature, also have this generative AI component. We're starting to see these computer use agents that are making decisions based on inputs and screen views and things like that. They're actually able to respond to external circumstances to some degree, and I think that is going to have to be part of the Internet of Agent logic. And I'm not sure how much Cisco is going to be comfortable with doing that. Being, I've always thought of them as a network and infrastructure company and fantastic at it. But how much do they understand about the UX that generative AI and graphics create that would lead to kind of the more human interactions associated with agents?
So I haven't read their research paper. They have a detailed paper, and I haven't gone through it yet. And so I'm curious. I mean, the fact that it's Cisco implies to me that they may be considering something similar to like the OSI stack, right? Where
Mhm.
these agents now have an embedded layer that sort of identify themselves and say, "This is what my domain, and this is how I work," or I don't know what. But and I don't know if that's sustainable or workable either. But at least it's intriguing, right?
Mhm.
Where I mean, because to your point, the challenge that we have with this sort of API based metaphor, and by the way, as an example, Snowflake is exposing their agents via an API, right? So this is the common approach right now: is we do an API call, the agents go do their thing, and we send a response. But when you start talking about truly massive agent orchestration, that is nowhere near. It's too slow, it's too cumbersome, it's too deterministic. And
Mhm.
you can see that it's not going to work. We need much more of a meshed approach. And so that's why this idea of the Internet of Agents makes conceptual sense, but it requires us adding a metadata layer that is then has a common kind of component to it that no one's really talking about right now. So I welcome the conversation. I'm very curious. I'm going to read through the research or the white paper to see exactly where they're going with it. But I guess my big point is juxtaposing it to the workday. I think this is a much more thoughtful approach to how you're going to deal with it versus simply trying to abstract. And look, I think there's going to be cases where it makes sense to treat some of your agents as quote unquote employees, especially as they advance. But for the most part, I think that the vast majority of this number, whatever it ends up being, is actually not going to operate that way. It's going to operate much more like a microservice operates.
Yeah, I think there's going to be. So I'm a FinOps guy. And when I've looked at each of these IT management categories I look at across telecom, network, mobility, software, and cloud, there always ends up being kind of at least two systems of record that happen. One that is kind of an inventory and cost based perspective, which I think Workday is actually well prepared to support because they do contingent labor, they have a financial planning and budgeting solution. They have inventory, obviously. They have analytic capabilities from their Prism analytics. So they have all this stuff to be able to look at that behavior. I don't think they're well equipped to look at the orchestration and transactional behavior that agents do, where Cisco is obviously going to be a much stronger player. And so they're doing different sides, but I think the technical side is honestly going to build out first. I think
And
Workday
I
is
think
better.
it's going to be a tougher problem to solve. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be incredibly complex.